I caught my wife cheating. I tried to rebuild. I even found love again. And then, one day, my ex tried to run us over in a mall parking lot, me and the woman who had given me a reason to breathe again. I've been reading stories on Reddit for years, silently nodding along, but never thought I'd have one to share. Then my world collapsed in a way I still don't fully understand. It's taken me months to find the words, to steady my hands long enough to write it out. Maybe telling it will help someone else. Maybe it'll help me. My name is Elliot. I'm 38 years old, and I live in a quiet neighborhood just outside of Boise, Idaho. I married a woman named Vanessa when I was 32. She was 31 then. I thought we were forever. 6 years later, all I have are scars I can't quite explain. I used to tell myself it wasn't all bad, that at least the beginning felt magical. We met on Instagram, that silly app we all scroll through before bed. She was stunning, witty, artistic. I thought I'd found someone good, someone safe. Growing up, I never saw what healthy love looked like. My father stayed with my mother, even though she broke out a little more every day. I remember the 3 a.m. screaming matches, the shattering of plates against the kitchen walls, the hollow silence afterward. My dad never left. He said it was because he loved us. So I watched, I learned, and I swore I'd never be like him. I would never ignore red flags. That's why when I met Vanessa, I didn't just fall. I investigated. For 2 years, I paid attention to everything. How she handled money, how she reacted to stress, how she treated waiters. I was meticulous. And to be fair, she passed every single test. She was patient when I panicked over small things. She never raised her voice. She'd cook dinner when I worked late. She said thank you for the little things. I believed her. I believed us. I even told my best friend that I had finally broken the cycle, that the violence stopped with me. I was wrong. We got married in the foothills just outside town, an autumn wedding with golden leaves and candlelight. We bought a cozy 3-bedroom house on a cul-de-sac. It had a porch swing, and I remember thinking, this is it. This is peace. For a while, it was, until it wasn't. 2 years in, everything changed. I don't mean gradually. I mean violently, overnight. We went from quiet dinners to screaming matches over nonsense. Who left dishes in the sink? Who forgot to water the plants? She hated how late I worked. I hated how often she went out. It felt like we were stuck in a loop of stupid arguments and cold silences. This was the same woman who once left me little notes in my work bag, notes that said things like, "I love you more today than yesterday." Now she was slamming cabinet doors because I brought home the wrong kind of peanut butter. I suggested couples therapy, begged for it actually. I was raised to believe that love is something you protect, that you fix it when it's broken. She said, "It's your idea, so you pay for it." So I did. I found a therapist who specialized in marriage, scheduled the appointments, covered the bill. We went once, just once. It was a disaster. The therapist pointed out communication issues and said Vanessa might be dealing with unresolved grief. Vanessa started sobbing, real heaving sobs, and said she felt attacked. She stormed out and never went back. Later, I learned her father had passed away not long before our worst fights began. I tried to show compassion. I tried to ask, but she wouldn't talk about it. She wouldn't seek help. She just got meaner, quieter, colder. Her anger didn't come in punches, but it still bruised. One night she screamed so loudly that a neighbor called the cops. She was furious that I had forgotten to pick up her dry cleaning. And I just stood there, wondering how love could rot so silently. Vanessa never apologized for the dry cleaning. But honestly, that wasn't even the point. We eventually slipped into this lifeless routine where we barely existed side by side. We shared a room, sometimes a bed, but rarely a word. Our days became identical. Wake up, leave for work, Return home, eat dinner in front of the television, go to sleep. Repeat. Always repeat. The silence between us did what time and therapy couldn't. It numbed the fighting. But not the sadness, not the loneliness, not the ache of loving someone who didn't love you anymore. And God, I still loved her. That's what breaks me the most. Isn't that the saddest part? That even in all of it, I held on to something that had already let go of me. I'd lie awake some nights and remember our first winter together, how we'd pile under a single blanket, drinking cocoa, making plans. I'd tell myself that maybe, just maybe, we could get back there, if I tried hard enough, if I was patient enough. I believed in the vows we made, for better or worse, right? I thought that meant something. What I forgot was the part about forsaking all others. But I was raised to believe marriage was sacred. You don't throw it away when it gets hard. You don't run. You fix it. Unless there's hitting or cheating. And at the time, I didn't know either was about to become part of our story. I didn't know how far gone things really were. At the time, I was working a bland corporate job, middle management at a tech company in downtown Boise. Nothing flashy. Paper pushing, endless Zoom meetings, quarterly reports. Just high enough on the ladder to travel occasionally, but not important enough to get any perks for it. I was scheduled to attend a 4-day business expo in Seattle. Networking, client pitches, overpriced hotel coffee. Boring, but necessary. So I went. And that's where my life split in half. On day 3 of the expo, something happened back at our office. A data crash. One of those all-hands-on-deck kind of disasters. I got the call around noon. I was told to catch the first flight home. I didn't hesitate. Booked the ticket, packed my bag, and caught an Uber to the airport within the hour. Maybe I was just being the responsible employee, or maybe I was just desperate to feel useful to someone. But on that flight, all I could think about was her, Vanessa. You know those movie scenes where the husband comes home early to surprise his wife? Where he walks in with flowers and the camera slows down as the music swells? That's what I pictured. That's what I was trying to recreate. I stopped at this expensive boutique florist on the way back from the airport and spent nearly $80 on a bouquet of purple orchids, her favorite. She always said they reminded her of our first date. I grabbed a bottle of champagne and those luxury chocolates she used to love. In my stupid, hopeful mind, I thought this gesture might bring us back. I got home around 2 in the afternoon. Her car was in the driveway. It made sense. She worked from home on Thursdays. The house looked normal, but something was off. Her favorite playlist was drifting down from upstairs. She only played it when she was in a good mood. There were 2 wine glasses in the sink. That should have been the first red flag. But I didn't stop. I didn't think. I just smiled and tiptoed toward the stairs, balancing the flowers and champagne like some hopeful fool in a bad rom-com. I remember hearing sounds as I climbed the steps, music, and something else beneath it. Rhythmic, muffled. My mind tried to protect me. It didn't connect the dots. And then I opened the door. You ever watch a horror movie where everyone screams at the screen, telling the character not to go in? That was me. I turned the knob. I stepped into our bedroom. And everything I thought I knew turned to ash. There she was, Vanessa, my wife, beneath some stranger in our bed. The bed where we'd once talked about baby names, where I had held her after her father's funeral. She didn't scream. She didn't apologize. She didn't even stop. It was like I didn't exist. I stood frozen, watching the orchids fall from my hand and scatter across the floor like confetti at a funeral. The bouquet slipped from my hands, and I watched the petals scatter across the hardwood floor like startled insects under a flipped light. The man, that stranger, had the nerve to dart toward the hallway like I was just some forgotten valet blocking his exit. I'll never forget that moment. something inside me cracked wide open. Maybe it was seeing him half naked in my home, or maybe it was the way he tried to slither away from the destruction he helped cause, like none of it mattered. Before I even knew what I was doing, my hand was at his throat. It wasn't a choke, not really, but it was firm enough to tell him he wasn't walking out like nothing happened. Instead of throwing a punch like some jealous husband stereotype, I slapped him, twice, hard. Not closed fists, but sharp, humiliating slaps, like something out of a soap opera. I don't know why I didn't punch him. Maybe because I knew, deep down, he wasn't the real villain in this story. The fear in his eyes turned quickly to rage, like he thought he had the right to fight me, in my house, in my bedroom. The way he squared his jaw, I could tell he had no idea who I was. Vanessa must have told him she was single, maybe separated at most. I saw it clearly then. He didn't even know she was married. In his mind, I was just some deranged ex who wouldn't let go. And for a moment, I considered swinging, really swinging. But I didn't. Not because I was scared, but because I realized in that instant that he didn't owe me anything. He never made promises to me. He didn't say vows at an altar. He was just a man who made a stupid choice, one I might have made too, had I been fed the same lies. No, the real betrayal was still in that bedroom. My whole body was shaking when I turned back to her. Vanessa, the woman I'd built a life with for 6 years, was fumbling with her bra like it was just another part of her morning routine. The orchids I'd picked out with so much hope were now trampled, their petals crushed beneath the weight of someone else's feet. And there she was, standing in front of the mirror I had installed last Christmas because she said it had better lighting. She was fixing her hair, calmly, almost bored. She didn't even look at me. It was as if I hadn't just walked in on her affair, as if I hadn't watched everything we built collapse in real time. Her reflection met mine only once, and even then it was brief, uninterested, like I was the one intruding. And then she had the audacity, the actual audacity, to look irritated and ask, "Why are you even back?" Not a sorry, not even a half-hearted lie, just a tone of annoyance, like I had messed up her afternoon plans. I wanted to scream, to break something, to shake her and make her understand what she had done. My hand twitched at my side, remembering how it felt to strike the man she brought into our bed, the same bed where she once whispered dreams of our future into my ear. But I stayed frozen. She muttered, "You weren't supposed to be back." Like I was the one in the wrong, like I had committed the sin of returning home too early. And that's when it all sank in. 6 years of marriage, and this? This was what it had meant to her? A brief interruption in her afternoon rendezvous? I looked toward the nightstand. Our wedding photo sat there, still smiling. Just last weekend, I had made her breakfast in that very room. She told me she was too tired for intimacy, too drained. And yet, here she was, full of energy for a man I didn't even know. Like a fool, I stood there thinking about all those late work nights she mentioned, the girls' weekends, the trips to her mother's, and all I could think was, how long had this been happening? And how blind had I been? How long had this been going on? That question played over and over in my head, looping behind every heartbeat. How many strangers had been in my bed, in our bed, the place where I once thought love lived? I hadn't even processed what I had just witnessed when Vanessa snapped. And I don't mean upset or ashamed. I mean full-blown, red-faced fury. It was like I had destroyed her life, not the other way around. "You weren't supposed to come home," she screamed, her face blotchy with anger. "This is your fault." She shouted like a child caught sneaking out, not a grown woman who had just shattered 6 years of marriage. And then came the mental gymnastics, gold medal worthy truly. In her twisted version of events, the betrayal wasn't that she had cheated on me, no, it was that I had discovered it. I hadn't told her I was coming back early. I hadn't given her time to clean up the mess she made. I had ruined her illusion of control. And then came the line I'll never forget. "You declined the open relationship," she yelled. "You brought this on yourself." 6 months earlier, during one of her wine-soaked rants, she'd floated the idea, said maybe we should try something different. I said no, I've never been wired that way. I told her I believed in monogamy, in commitment, in working through the hard parts. Apparently, that meant she had license to do it anyway. And in her eyes, I was the unreasonable one. "I tried to do this without hurting you," she shouted, like that was supposed to earn her sympathy. Tried, as if what I walked in on was a mercy. That word, tried, broke something in me. It shattered the fragile glass I had built around my heart, the last bit of belief I still held in us. Every memory, every whispered "I love you," every lazy Sunday morning, it all went up in smoke, reduced to one selfish justification: I have needs. My hands were trembling when I stepped toward her. I didn't even think, I just moved, grief pulling me like gravity. I grabbed the collar of the shirt I had bought her last month for her birthday, and for a brief second, I saw fear in her eyes. Real, human fear, and it stopped me. That's not who I am. I could have hurt her. I wanted to. I wanted her to feel the sharp sting of betrayal the way I had, to carry it in her chest like burning coals. But I couldn't. I saw in her eyes the same look my mother used to give my father, wide, trembling, pleading. I had sworn I would never be that man. I would never put that look on someone's face, no matter how deeply they hurt me. So I let go. I stepped back, fists still clenched, heart still splintering. Part of me still wishes I had given in, not because she didn't deserve it, but because I deserve to feel something other than powerless. But if I had, I would have lost more than just my marriage. I would have lost myself. There I stood, in a bedroom that felt foreign, surrounded by crushed flowers, lies, and broken promises. Vanessa looked at me like I was the villain. She didn't cry. She didn't apologize. She played the part of the wounded woman, the victim. When I released her shirt, she changed again, just like that, from frightened to smug, like she had flipped a switch. "You were really going to hit me?" she said, loud enough for the neighbors to hear. Her voice was soaked in accusation now, full of performance. I turned to leave. "That's why I don't love you anymore," she called after me. "You're not even a man." She followed me down the hallway, shouting every insult she could think of. After 6 years, this was how it ended. Her trying to paint me as the monster. And for a moment, I almost believed her. It wasn't until I spoke to my friend Mark that night that it clicked. "She wanted you to hit her," he said flatly. "Think about it." And it made a sick kind of sense. She wanted a bruise, a reason to run to the cops. She could spin the story. Poor Vanessa, trapped with an abusive husband. She'd cry on cue, take half of everything I worked for, and walk away the hero. It was all a setup. I was standing in the middle of a trap, and the only reason I didn't fall was because of the one vow I never broke: to never become my father. I needed to get out. The whole house reeked of betrayal. It was in the linens, in the air, in the sweat of that stranger. I couldn't breathe. The smell of him still lingered in our room, cologne and sweat tangled with her perfume, invading every inch of the space that once felt safe. Even the bedsheets, where I used to hold her through her panic attacks, now reeked of betrayal. I grabbed my keys and wallet and walked out without looking back. I ended up at Mark's place. He didn't ask questions. One look at my face and he was already reaching for the whiskey. Mark had been through it. A bitter divorce, a broken heart, the whole thing. So he didn't sugarcoat anything. He just poured me a drink and said, "You need a lawyer. Immediately." He wasn't wrong. The cruelest part? Vanessa worked part-time at some trendy boutique downtown, barely covering her own gas, while I was pulling in 6 figures. That meant, under Idaho law, I could be forced to pay her alimony. The same woman who had just desecrated our marriage in our own bed might now have a legal claim to my income. That's the maddening thing about divorce. It doesn't care who cheated. It just cares about numbers. But Mark, being the sharp guy he is, said something that gave me a flicker of hope. If you can prove adultery, it could impact what she's entitled to. Then he looked me in the eye and said, "Start documenting everything. Emails, texts, receipts, anything that could prove she'd been unfaithful." He practically yelled it, "Screenshot everything." So that's what I did. I sat on his couch with my laptop open, searching for divorce attorneys while trying not to throw up. Just that morning, I'd been buying flowers and chocolates for a woman I thought I still had a future with. Now I was Googling legal terms I never wanted to understand. I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't going to try to fix anything. I may have been stupid enough to plan a romantic surprise for someone who was sleeping with another man, but I wasn't stupid enough to stick around afterward. Then my phone started blowing up. Vanessa, apparently unable to manipulate me face-to-face, resorted to text, and the messages she sent were beyond cruel. A week earlier, she was texting me heart emojis and "I love you." Now, she was giving me a detailed comparison between me and her affair partner, in bed no less. She outlined how much better he was at everything, how he satisfied her in ways I never could. She wrote paragraphs about how she had been faking it with me for years, like she was writing a Yelp review about our marriage. Reading it made my stomach churn. She even had the gall to say he had ruined her for other men, like that was something I needed to know, as if I would ever want her back after what I saw. But the part that truly broke me was her tone. She wasn't just mean, she was proud. She was furious that I had ruined her good thing, that I had come home and interrupted her fantasy. According to her, I was selfish. Selfish for coming back early, for walking into our house without notice, for wrecking the illusion she was living in. Vanessa's mental gymnastics would have impressed an Olympic judge. She wasn't ashamed. She was angry that her secret was exposed. Angry that I hadn't politely waited for a more convenient time to catch her cheating. If Mark hadn't been there beside me, telling me over and over to screenshot it all, I might have lost my mind. "Document, document, document," he kept saying. And I did. Thank God I did. Because not even a minute after her tirade, I watched those little text bubbles disappear, one by one, as she started deleting everything. She must have realized that spelling out her affair in high-definition text to a husband who made 3 times her income wasn't the smartest move right before a divorce. After the bragging came the insults. She called me every name you can imagine. But conveniently, she stopped talking about her little afternoon adventure. It was like watching someone sweep shattered glass under a rug, pretending the damage never happened. But the cuts were still there, deep and bleeding. Watching Vanessa delete those texts in real time was like witnessing someone try to erase a crime scene. One by one, her messages disappeared. The ones where she detailed how much better he was in bed, how she'd faked everything with me for years, how I'd ruined her happiness by coming home too early. But what she didn't know was that I already had screenshots of every single one. She could delete them from her phone, but not from my memory, and not from my camera roll. The truth was preserved, pixel by pixel, ready for the judge to see. That night, Mark became my lifeline. He sat with me as I scrolled through lawyer listings, sipping whiskey and trying not to fall apart. Between swigs, he walked me through the process. What to protect, what to collect, what to expect. I barely slept. My brain wouldn't shut off. I kept cycling through everything. The flowers on the floor, the betrayal, the lies she wrote with such confidence. The next 2 weeks were a blur of meetings with attorneys. Some seemed like they had barely passed the bar. Others demanded fees that rivaled my mortgage. Just when I was about to give up hope, I met Lucas, a lawyer with kind eyes, a sharp mind, and a fee that wouldn't bankrupt me. He didn't try to upsell me or patronize me, he just listened. And when I showed him the screenshots, his expression changed. He leaned back, looked me dead in the eye, and said, "We can work with this." He warned me not to get too hopeful, that courts in our state tended to side with the lower-earning spouse regardless of what caused the divorce, but he promised to fight for me. For the first time since this nightmare began, I didn't feel completely alone. Serving Vanessa the divorce papers was supposed to be a straightforward step. Instead, it became its own drama. For 3 weeks, she dodged the process server like she was starring in some twisted rom-com. She changed her schedule, hide out at her mom's place, even had her mother lie and say she'd moved to Florida. The woman hadn't stepped into a gym in years, but the day she was finally served, she was walking out of a yoga studio, suddenly all about fitness and zen. She waited until the very last day allowed to respond, just to make me pay more. She knew Lucas charged by the hour. She was dragging this out on purpose. And when the proceedings officially began, she became something else entirely. Petty, cruel, and relentless. She forgot critical documents, arrived late to every meeting, claimed she couldn't find old bank statements I knew she had. She demanded we inventory every single item in the house, down to the last mismatched spoon. Her lawyer sent over proposal after proposal, each more ridiculous than the last. She wanted the house, my 401k, monthly alimony. This was the same woman I had caught cheating in our bed. And the part that stung the most, she was still with him. Yes, mutual friends confirmed it. While I was spending thousands on legal fees and trying to piece myself together, she was playing house with her affair partner. Every time we were close to finalizing an agreement, she'd change her mind, add a new demand, delay the process just enough to bleed more money out of me. I could almost hear her laughing about it, curled up in another man's arms, while I wrote more checks to Lucas. I tried to move on. I downloaded the apps, Bumble, Tinder, all of them. I went on a few dates, hooked up a couple times, told myself this was what freedom looked like. But every time I woke up next to someone new, I felt emptier than before, like I was trying to stitch a wound with broken glass. I told myself that casual dating was the way forward, that maybe a few one-night stands would help me forget, that this is what moving on looked like. But every morning after felt worse than the last. Every empty bed, every stranger's apartment, every awkward silence after the lights went out just reminded me why I'd said no to Vanessa's open relationship proposal in the first place. That lifestyle wasn't for me. I'd never been the guy who could detach. I've always wanted something real, the kind of connection where you share inside jokes, know how they take their coffee, and fall asleep each night with the same hand resting softly on your chest. What I was doing felt hollow. It was like trying to fill a hole in my heart with pieces that didn't fit. With work, the divorce, and failed attempts at dating, I needed something, anything, to stop my mind from unraveling. Before Vanessa, I used to read all the time. I'd stay up until 2 a.m. turning pages under a bedside lamp. But then life got loud. Loud with arguments, loud with her slamming doors, loud with lawyers. Somewhere in that chaos, I stopped picking up books. So one rainy Saturday, instead of scrolling Tinder or answering another round of emails from my lawyer, I walked into this little independent bookstore near the edge of downtown. It was the kind of place that smelled like paper and dust and quiet, with cats sleeping in the windows, hardwood floors that creaked like they were part of the conversation, and books piled in every direction. For the first time in months, I felt a flicker of calm. I wandered to the science fiction section, but it was like stepping into a foreign country. Everything had changed while I'd been busy holding together a crumbling marriage. I didn't recognize any titles. There were 15-book series with names I couldn't pronounce. I just stood there, confused and overwhelmed, like some middle-aged man who'd lost his way. Because I had. Then I heard a laugh. Not mocking, just soft, warm, amused. I turned to see a woman holding a book that looked like it could knock someone unconscious. She smiled at me, not the forced kind, but something open and genuine, and asked if I needed help. I admitted I was completely lost, just trying to find some decent sci-fi to get back into reading. That's all it took. Next thing I knew, we were sitting in these mismatched old chairs tucked into a corner of the store. She started explaining what I'd missed, which authors were worth reading, which series were overrated. Her voice lit up when she talked about her favorites. She had this habit of tucking her hair behind her ear when she got excited, and I remember watching her hands as she spoke, wondering how a stranger could make me feel more seen in 1 hour than my wife had in years. That book suggestion turned into a 2-hour conversation, from space operas to old Asimov favorites. I told her about the books I loved in college, and she told me about this quirky parallel universe series she adored. For the first time in what felt like forever, I wasn't talking about lawyers or paperwork or betrayal. I was just a man in a bookstore, laughing with someone who actually listened. When I finally worked up the courage to ask for her number, my hand shook like I was 16 again. Her name was Emma. She gave it to me with a grin and a recommendation for the 3-body problem. I left that bookstore with her number in my phone, a new book in my hand, and something else I hadn't felt in a long time: hope. That night, when we texted, it felt different. It wasn't hollow or forced. It was easy, real. I knew I needed to tell her the truth when we had our first proper date. I'd practiced that conversation a dozen times, expecting her to run the moment she heard about my situation. But Emma just sipped her wine and said, "Thanks for being honest. At least you're dealing with your baggage. We've all got it." And just like that, she gave me something Vanessa never had: grace. Emma remembered things, little things, like what I had told her about my job weeks before, or the name of the book I said I loved in college. She listened. She cared. Not once did she make me feel like a burden for being in the middle of a painful, drawn-out divorce. She never looked at me like I was broken. For the first time in years, I felt visible. I felt like someone worth listening to. And the strangest part? I wasn't even trying to find someone. We met in a bookstore of all places. No dating apps, no setups, just two people who stumbled into something quiet and real while standing between dusty shelves and forgotten stories. 5 months after that chance meeting, I was deep. Emma had completely disarmed me. She made me feel safe in ways I didn't know I needed, sending me sci-fi book recommendations while I was stuck in work meetings, slipping little notes into the pages of books she lent me, smiling patiently as I stumbled through stories about my day. She paid attention in a way Vanessa never did. She gave freely, without ever making me feel like I owed her something in return. But Vanessa wasn't done making my life miserable. Every time I thought we were finally nearing the end of the divorce, she'd find a new excuse. A missing signature, a forgotten account, some suddenly contested piece of property. She was determined to make every inch of the process as long and painful as possible. And Emma, somehow, never once pressured me. She never complained about dating a technically married man. She just sat with me during those exhausting calls with Lucas and reminded me, gently, that it wouldn't last forever. And for the first time in what felt like ages, I started to believe that maybe I could actually be okay again. That belief didn't last. One Saturday, Emma and I had just finished lunch at this small cafe tucked away behind a row of antique shops. We were heading back to her car in the parking lot. The sun was dipping low behind the foothills, and she was laughing about something, I don't even remember what now, when I heard it. An engine, screaming. It was the kind of sound that stops your heart. I turned instinctively and saw the car barreling toward us. No hesitation, no time to think, just raw velocity heading straight for Emma. I reached for her, grabbed her arm, tried to pull her out of the way, but I wasn't fast enough. The car clipped her leg, and the sound it made, that sickening snap, still haunts me. She went down hard, and I followed her, trying to protect her as she hit the pavement. Her screams were sharp and immediate, and all I could think was, please don't let her die. I was reaching for my phone to call 911 when I heard the tires screech again. The engine roared, the car had backed up, and was coming for us a second time. It wasn't an accident. Emma's leg was bent at a grotesque angle. She was sobbing, trembling. I grabbed her and dragged her between two parked cars. She screamed every time we moved, but I didn't have a choice. The car hit the row of cars we were hiding between with terrifying force. Alarms blared, people started yelling, phones went up. The chaos erupted all at once, but I couldn't focus on any of it. All I could see was her. Then the driver's door opened, and Vanessa stepped out like she was arriving at a luncheon. Hair curled perfectly, blazer spotless, expression unreadable. She looked exactly like she had the last time I saw her in court, except now her eyes held something different, something I didn't recognize, something terrifying. It wasn't shock or panic, it was pure, calculated hate. My soon-to-be ex-wife, the woman who once made me soup when I was sick, had followed us, stalked us, and tried to kill the one person who had helped me feel human again. This wasn't road rage. This wasn't a mistake. This was intentional. Vanessa had decided that if she couldn't have me, no one could. And Emma, the woman who had done nothing but love me quietly, was the one who paid the price. Something inside me broke the moment I heard Emma's whimpers echoing across the pavement and saw the unnatural angle of her leg. It was like watching a horror movie where you already knew the ending but couldn't stop it from playing out. In one moment of blind rage and calculated cruelty, Vanessa had tried to murder a woman whose only offense was loving me. That's all Emma had done. She had been kind to me. She had brought warmth back into a life hollowed out by betrayal. And now she lay bleeding on the concrete because my ex-wife had decided that if she couldn't destroy me emotionally, she'd try to do it physically. At that point, this wasn't about the end of a marriage. This wasn't just another bitter divorce. Vanessa had crossed into something unrecognizable, something violent and unhinged. I was terrified she might have a weapon, terrified she'd try again. I wrapped myself around Emma, whispering to her that help was on the way, but my eyes never left Vanessa. I was afraid to blink. When Vanessa stepped out of the car, it felt like time cracked. I'd known this woman for nearly a decade. I'd shared a home with her, made her coffee, held her through grief. But the person stepping out of that driver's seat wasn't someone I recognized. This wasn't the woman I'd once believed I'd grow old with. No, this was something much darker. Something monstrous, wearing her skin. The realization hit hard. This wasn't some spontaneous act of madness. It wasn't even rage in the heat of the moment. No, Vanessa had followed us. She had stalked us. She had waited until the perfect moment, when we were alone and distracted, to strike. She had made the decision, step by step, to take us out. In broad daylight, in public. And when she began walking toward us, her heels clicking on the pavement like the seconds on a doomsday clock, I felt genuine fear. Her face was blank, eerily calm, but her eyes burned with hatred I had never seen, not even in our ugliest fights. She wasn't screaming, she wasn't crying, she was just walking like a machine. If that man, the one who looked like a linebacker, hadn't tackled her from behind, I don't know what would have happened. Even restrained, she thrashed like a wild animal, snarling and trying to claw her way forward. And still, even as I held Emma, trying to stop the bleeding, I couldn't take my eyes off Vanessa. This woman had once made me scrambled eggs with a heart drawn in ketchup on my plate. She used to text me midday just to say she missed me. And now she was here, restrained by strangers, screaming obscenities, after trying to run down the only good thing I'd found in the wreckage of our marriage. How do you process that? The police arrived first, then the ambulance. Lights, sirens, chaos. Emma was sobbing as they lifted her onto the stretcher, her face contorted in pain, but she still tried to smile at me, tried to reassure me. I was covered in her blood and barely able to breathe, but somehow she was the one reaching for my hand. Vanessa completely lost control as they cuffed her. "It's only been a year and you're already flaunting that trash around?" she screamed, voice ragged, spit flying from her lips. People stepped back instinctively, not just from her words, but from the venom in them. She had just tried to commit murder in front of dozens of witnesses, and somehow, in her twisted mind, she was the victim. That's when I knew without question that she had completely unhinged. I had walked in on her cheating. She was the one who broke our vows. And yet, she'd spent a year prolonging our divorce out of spite, turning herself into the story's martyr. And now, having nearly killed someone, she was still casting herself as the betrayed. I stood there, numb, in the center of that parking lot as they loaded her into the back of the police cruiser. Emma's blood was drying on my shirt, and my hands wouldn't stop shaking. The woman I once thought I'd grow old with had just tried to kill the one person who made me feel alive again. And the worst part? I wouldn't have blamed Emma if she walked away from me forever. Emma had spent months in physical therapy, learning to walk again while her leg remained encased in a towering cast that stretched from thigh to ankle. When I finally told her the full truth, that it had been Vanessa behind the wheel, I couldn't bring myself to meet her eyes. I just stared at the speckled tile floor of the hospital room, bracing for the moment she'd whisper the words I feared the most. "I can't do this anymore." But instead, she just squeezed my hand and said, "Well, at least she'll have plenty of time to work on her road rage in prison." She smiled when she said it, genuinely smiled. This woman, broken and bruised because of the person I once married, was lying in a hospital bed with metal pins in her leg, and somehow she was trying to make me feel better. I asked her, quietly, if she was sure she still wanted to be with me. After everything. After nearly dying because she'd chosen to love someone whose past hadn't fully let go. Emma tilted her head and gave me this look, part amusement, part fierce determination. Do you really think I'm going to let her win? I'm going to walk again, and she's going to prison. That sounds like a win to me. The district attorney's office had taken one look at the security footage and treated the case like a top priority. It turned out nearly every second of Vanessa's attack had been captured in shocking clarity from multiple angles. Cameras around the shopping center showed her circling the parking lot slowly, like a shark stalking its prey. She parked and waited, watching us. Then, when we were in the right spot, she floored it. This wasn't a moment of passion, it was a calculated act. The DA explained that Vanessa had passed our location at least 3 times before launching the car at Emma. You could see everything. The moment she saw us laughing, the second she gripped the wheel, the exact second she hit the gas. The footage showed Emma getting hit, me pulling her between cars, and Vanessa backing up for another attempt. According to the prosecutor, it was one of the most clear-cut attempted murder cases they'd seen in years. No excuses, no way to claim temporary insanity. This was premeditated, planned, intentional. And the strangest part, the part that still turns my stomach, was what Vanessa did just before driving straight at us. She looked in her rearview mirror and adjusted her lipstick, calmly, carefully, as if she were preparing for a meeting, not an attack. That one small act, the prosecutor told me, sealed her fate. It showed she wasn't acting out of impulse or emotional breakdown. She was in complete control. A woman who took the time to fix her makeup before trying to kill someone. Because apparently, looking put together in a mugshot mattered more to her than whether Emma lived or died. Everything else, the divorce, the settlement talks, the paperwork, was frozen for months. I rotated between the courthouse, my job, and Emma's hospital room. My supervisor tried to be patient at first, but I could feel his frustration growing as the missed hours piled up. Vanessa had cheated. She had lied. But when I moved on, she decided to make sure no one else ever got to have me, even if it meant destroying herself in the process. I was exhausted, running on caffeine, rage, and whatever little bit of hope Emma's voice gave me. When the trial finally began, it felt like stepping into a theater of pain. The DA kept stacking evidence, camera angles from 6 different directions, each showing the same nightmare. And the witnesses, it felt like the entire parking lot had stayed behind that day. There was the soccer mom with a cart full of groceries, the teenage boy who caught it all on video, and the retired police officer who tackled Vanessa before she could make it to us. Each of them confirmed the same thing. This wasn't an accident. Even with her cast still stiff and heavy, Emma took the stand, and she was radiant. Not a tear shed, not a waver in her voice. She told the jury what it felt like to see the car coming, what it sounded like when her leg broke, and how it felt knowing that Vanessa was coming back for a second strike. Emma described everything on the stand, the moment she saw the car coming, the pain when her leg snapped like dry wood, and the horror of realizing Vanessa was reversing for another attempt. Her voice didn't crack, she didn't cry, she just told the truth. I took the stand too, recounting the threats, the texts, the cheating, the games Vanessa had played with the divorce. I told them what it felt like to watch someone you used to love try to kill the one person who saved you. Vanessa sat across from me the entire time, dabbing at her eyes with tissues, wearing that same forced expression of regret. But the jurors saw through it. The verdict came back, guilty on all counts, reckless endangerment, aggravated assault with a deadly weapon, and attempted murder. And then came the sentencing. 12 years. 12 years for planning and attempting to murder 2 people in broad daylight. Even then, I was told that if she behaved well, she might get out much earlier. The judge seemed moved by her act. The tears, the shaky voice, the claim that she wasn't thinking clearly. Vanessa sobbed as she told the court she had just lost control and didn't mean to hurt anyone. But I couldn't stop thinking about the moment she adjusted her lipstick before trying to run us over. How calm and methodical she'd been. The prosecutors said it was her first offense, no criminal history, claimed remorse. But how does that erase intent? She tracked us. She waited. She aimed. If that stranger hadn't pulled her to the ground, Emma might be dead. I might be dead. But instead, she got a sentence shorter than some men get for non-violent drug charges. That's the world we live in. And the final blow? During sentencing, she had the nerve to turn to us and say she was sorry, that she wasn't herself that day. As though there's ever a version of yourself that makes it okay to try and kill people in a parking lot. Emma didn't respond. She just stared at her, calm, still, unblinking, refusing to give her the closure she wanted. 12 years wasn't enough. But 12 years meant 12 years we wouldn't have to keep checking over our shoulders. The aftermath shifted everything. Suddenly, the divorce, once so tangled and grueling, became easy. Vanessa appeared in court via video from prison, looking oddly composed in her orange jumpsuit. Her lawyer tried one last time to claim she deserved a share of my assets, the house, my 401k, alimony. But the judge cut through it all. "I'm not in the business of rewarding attempted murder," he said. "She'll get exactly what she brought into the marriage." Her personal items, her clothes, her prison commissary account. That was it. The lawyer's face turned pale as every demand was shot down. No share of the home, no alimony, no part of my savings. Vanessa had dragged out the process for months, tried every dirty tactic in the book. But in the end, she'd destroyed her own case. She might have walked away with something, anything, if she hadn't tried to turn Emma into roadkill. Instead, she got a jail cell and a blank slate. But even with the legal nightmare over, I couldn't stay in that apartment. The walls whispered memories I wanted to forget. Every time I passed the bedroom, I saw the moment I found them. So Emma and I moved. We found a place closer to the city, with big windows and a view that reminded me of possibility. The bedroom wasn't haunted. Emma healed, fully. If you didn't know her story, you'd never guess what she'd been through. She still jokes that getting hit by a car was a small price to pay to get my ex out of our lives for good. That dark humor, it helps. We survived. We're still standing. But sometimes, when the nights are quiet and my mind wanders, I wonder if there was a moment when I could have stopped all of this. A red flag I ignored. A fight I should have paid more attention to. Maybe, just maybe, it didn't have to end like this. I should have paid more attention when Vanessa stopped going to couples therapy. That might have been my sign to walk away for good. But the truth is, madness doesn't always show up wearing warning lights. Sometimes it hides in plain sight, until one day it tries to murder the woman you love in a parking lot. Despite everything, I can say I'm finally starting to feel okay again. Emma and I still joke that we met over sci-fi books and now live in our own surreal kind of plot twist. But we're writing a better ending this time. We're talking about getting married next spring. Vanessa will be out someday. That part still lingers in the back of my mind. But we've taken precautions. Emma's father, a firearms instructor, made sure we both went through concealed carry training. Restraining orders are just paper after all. We document everything. We stay alert. And no, we don't go near that mall anymore. If you're going through a divorce or dealing with someone unstable, please be careful. Vet people. Pay attention to patterns. And if your gut tells you something's off, don't ignore it. Emma was almost taken from me because I thought my past was behind me. Thanks for sticking with me through this story. It still feels surreal sometimes. Emma's favorite joke? Your ex really drove that relationship into the ground. We still laugh, because if we don't, well, sometimes laughter is how you survive. We still visit the bookstore together. It's just in a different part of town now. Stories like Elliot's may seem extreme, but the warning signs of toxic or dangerous relationships are more common than most realize. Emotional instability, manipulative behavior, and obsessive control often begin subtly. Skipped therapy sessions, jealousy over harmless interactions, or blame shifting during conflicts. If you're navigating a difficult breakup or divorce, protect yourself emotionally and physically. Keep documentation of communications, set firm boundaries, and seek legal support if you feel threatened. If your new partner is at risk because of your past relationship, communicate openly, stay vigilant, and don't downplay your ex's behavior. Healing after trauma takes time. Don't rush it. Lean into routines that ground you. Therapy, community, and even something simple like rediscovering a hobby or visiting a bookstore can help rebuild a sense of safety and joy. Above all, trust your instincts. Love should never come with fear. If you feel like you're constantly looking over your shoulder, it's not love, it's survival. And you deserve more than just surviving. You deserve peace.